just to welcome you to our leadership series, Leading with Every Action. We are interviewing industry experts to discuss the important topics that are facing the nonprofit industry today. If you've missed our discussion in the past, we have all of our leadership series videos on our Every Action YouTube channel, so you can definitely find them all there. I highly recommend you check them out. We've had some really amazing speakers. So I just wanted to quickly introduce myself. I'm Jamie Muller. I'm the Vice President of Partnerships at Every Action, and I have the pleasure of working with consultants and agencies and other technology providers that work with clients in the nonprofit space. I also have worked at nonprofits myself in the past as a nonprofit leader. And so, when we're talking about these issues, there are ones that I have experienced and our panelists and co-hosts have experienced as well in their past roles. And so there are topics that we deeply relate to and know that they're ones that issues that commonly we're seeing leaders grapple with even today. And so that is why we want to have these discussions with you all. And I'm so excited to be joined by Shannon McCracken, from the Nonprofit Alliance. So Shannon, did you want to introduce yourself to everybody?
Thanks, Jamie. Yes, I am Shannon McCracken. I'm the CEO of the Nonprofit Alliance. Our members are nonprofit organizations and firms like Every Action that work with nonprofits. And together we promote, protect, and strengthen the nonprofit sector. Jamie, thanks for inviting me to be here with you today. Everyone is talking about the Great Resignation or the Great Migration, pick your term, right? And senior and C-suite roles are not immune to that by any stretch, whether it's early retirement or looking for greener pastures. This right now then is really the right time and the right place to be having a conversation about who and what comes next in your organization if you're having some of those leadership transitions, either expected or unexpected. So today, Jamie and I are going to be joined by Rahul Shah. He leads the regional business at Sattva Consulting, which is a management consulting and implementation firm. And they have, in addition to doing fabulous work directly with nonprofit organizations around the consulting strategies, they also, as a firm, have a mission to end poverty in our lifetime. So Rahul, thanks so much for being here with us today.
Thanks for having me. Really appreciate it.
Can you start us out with a lay of the land? So many of us are living every day with the challenges with hiring, with workplace culture, with retaining, rewarding, promoting our own staff, staff retention in general. So can you just summarize what you're seeing across your clients and across the broader landscape with employment today in the nonprofit sector?
Sure. So, I see, different trends in the nonprofit employment sector across three different dimensions. One is the macro level trends. The other is org level practices. And the third is the individual level shifts, at the individual level, at the self. At the macro level, there are a lot of these constraints at the moment. The pandemic has created a lot of challenges in the labor markets overall, and the nonprofit sector is not immune. Employees are demanding higher wages. Institutions are rebuilding capacity to what they were pre-pandemic after any job cuts. And there's a lot of unfilled positions out there. And the nonprofit sector is now competing with the higher wages that the private sector is leveraging to attract talent back as well. So these are some of the macro trends. At the org level, nearly 2 years into the pandemic, employees have gotten a good sense of how their employers are responding to employee needs and the uncertainty of the pandemic. This has influenced a lot in the employment landscape as well. Some firms have done exceptionally well, become aspirational employers, offering flexibility in regards to work hours, childcare needs, emphasis on, employee wellness programs, mental health, mindfulness, bringing in external service providers or funding infrastructure at home. These are just a few of the ways that orgs, institutions have been responding internally in regards to the people-centric initiatives, which also helps them, attract and retain talent as well. So that's another kind of big factor. And the third is really at the individual level. People over the last couple of years have really been reflecting on their personal priorities and values. This could lead to things such as early retirement, working part-time hours to manage personal family priorities, or simply taking time off given the stress and burnout, especially those in the nonprofit sector, on the front lines. Others have also shifted industries, gone for higher education, or made other key decisions which are individually driven given all the disruptions, of the last couple of years. And these trends at each level really collectively influence the larger employment landscape in the nonprofit sector. And, I personally feel that people sustainability is really the new competitive advantage today. It's no longer about the organizations that are the quickest or most agile, have the most robust systems, but it's really about that long-term sustainability of the people that are truly driving things.
Well, and if I can pull on a thread of that people sustainability theme there, it's what I really just heard you saying is that employers are doing more to turn their priorities inward for the health and well-being, the whole health, whole person of their employees, more so than we have in the past, or employers have in the past. And yet nonprofit organizations can find themselves at a distinct disadvantage in terms of some of the resources to be able to do that, to be able to provide more paid time off, or to be able to provide health and wellness benefits and and so forth that some of the competing employers can provide. So maybe you can talk a little bit more about that as we're getting into it. A study that I read recently that was published by ASAE said that the resignations across the sector are really being led by the 30 to 45-year-olds, which when we're talking about succession planning, that's not always the age group we're thinking about first if we're talking about CEOs and C-suite, but it's that next layer. It's your up and comers, your rising stars. We're punching a hole right in the middle of our succession plans, our next gen leaders. And so, how would you advise organizations to address that particular challenge and help focus on the retention and development of those mid-tier leaders?
For sure. This is definitely a challenge that a lot of organizations have faced or will face in the near future. And, I think there are a variety of ways to retain talent and mitigate some of these risks across two major elements. One is org design, and the other is organizational culture. At the org design level, this is where organizations can really structurally incorporate succession planning into the org chart. It can help create linear pathways to leadership, such as a deputy director position or a number two across, any different kind of business unit or structure, creating bench strength based on future expectations and so forth. Of course, bench strength isn't always possible in resource constrained environments, but in principle, how do you, integrate this into your org design? The other aspect is looking at organizational culture. How do you create growth opportunities for individuals which cater to their interests? We've seen some tactical initiatives where, team members are allowed to spend a certain percentage of their time across other teams, which can, also help enable lateral moves in the case of attrition. And one thing that we've also employed a lot at Sattva is how do you develop project leadership across strategic initiatives, which actually mid-level staff can lead and create more opportunities for nonlinear pathways to leadership. At Sattva, for example, we had incubated our impact fund advisory team, for example. This was, overseen by our CEO, but had a very strong engagement manager and associate that was really driving things. Now that it's been properly incubated, resources are being allocated to it, and this engagement manager is really kind of being seen as a leader leading this unit, and really being able to do things that they might not be able to do until later in their careers. And that's another kind of way to help promote leadership internally. And unlike say creating bench strength or making investments, this is more of a cultural practice as well.
It's really interesting, and I love how you're allowing your up and comers and those that may not in their everyday roles get to experience some of these leadership opportunities. You're giving them in different ways, and also creating winning situations for them where they can build their confidence as leaders and experience success in these different ways. That's really cool. Rahul, so I don't know if you were with us yesterday, or yesterday, it feels like yesterday. What is time? Last week on Friday. But in that discussion with Lance Slaughter, who works at the ALS Association, he was talking about how in their strategic planning, they connected every role in the organization to the mission in some way. They made it a priority in their planning to connect everyone, whether it be the person that comes in at night to vacuum the offices, to the person that's doing accounts payable, to the person that is on the front lines working with at-home nurses, that everyone sees themselves in the mission. And how that can help change the perception for an individual employee and how they can see their future leadership opportunities at their org. Have you seen other organizations doing something similar, or what are your thoughts on how that can help in retainment of talent at this level?
For sure. I think it's always important to connect the day-to-day to the ultimate mission of the organization and vision of society. No doubt about that. And, sometimes we actually advise to actually articulate those goals of an organization and really physically put them along the walls of the organization physically. And this can actually really bring meaning to everyday work as well. For example, an employee might come in, have 10 emails to reply to and thinking, oh, I'm not helping anyone, I'm replying to emails, what am I doing? Really questioning, how their day-to-day is creating an impact. But if they, take a moment to stop, look at the wall and see some of these goals, they might realize, oh, my replying to these emails really contribute to that goal right there. And I know that goal is connected to our mission and ultimate vision of society, and hence, can bring meaning to the day-to-day kind of work, of any employee and so forth.
I think that's an important call out, that you have to be really intentional about it, and that is part of the leadership of the organization, is creating that intentionality and that opportunity to connect those dots. I worked for many years at the headquarters office of a chapter-based organization, and that's a couple degrees removed from frontline direct delivery of service and mission and engagement with stakeholders. And you can feel removed from the mission if you don't make a point of connecting those dots. So I hear you on that one. Rahul, can you talk about? Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I was just going to add to that, and yeah, no, very much so. And, even in consulting, we are enabling other social change actors to, help them increase their impact on those that they serve. But it's always important to kind of help, and we have many different units. We have a nonprofit advisory team that helps strengthen organizations. We have a research team that then helps inform ecosystem perspectives, an assessments team that helps prove and improve the impact of the work that's being done. And it's always kind of important that, you are pulling a lever towards change, whether a research report in that output of, a nice document might not seem like you're really contributing towards change, or, some people have felt that way. But, if you really kind of drive it back to informing ecosystem perspectives, enabling decision makers to take the best decisions, then, it's important to do that. And I also think it's very important to, have an open culture where people can really challenge these things as well. Like there have been some, potential leads that have come our way that we've actually really discussed internally to see, like, does this really create the impact that we want to contribute towards? Is this too business oriented, et cetera, et cetera? And I think culturally, it's very important to have that environment where people can challenge, from, the junior most team members to the most senior as well.
Very good call out. Yes. So let's switch focus here to a little bit more senior level positions. So Rahul, is it, as you get higher up in an organization, it can start to feel lonelier. You don't necessarily have the other people around you looking out for your health and well-being the way maybe other parts of the organization do have some of those layers. So how do you approach that, or what are you seeing? What do you recommend?
Yeah, no, this is definitely very true. As you said, it gets lonelier at the top and so forth. And what we've seen is some organizations will invest in that senior level coaching, or even leveraging board members as coaches. This could come at a cost if it's an external coach, but in high stress, fast-paced environments, sometimes it's, these investments that can actually yield returns, both in terms of mitigating the cost of attrition and even enabling higher performance and productivity. And, to mitigate the impact of any inevitable departures, it's always going to be important to really build your brand as an aspirational employer. You know, there's no silver bullet here, as aspirational employer will be defined differently for different people. But, you know, ultimately it comes back to a lot of these common elements like that mission and vision, the strength of leadership, cultural elements, evidence of impact, pay scales, and more. And yeah, there are other ways to kind of build the impact, to mitigate the impact by building the talent pipeline, investments in the recruitment function, even, you know, some low cost, say, partnerships with universities, establishing fellowship programs, and so forth. So yeah, there's these are just a few of the ways that we're seeing, you know, institutions really mitigate the risk and impact of some of these higher level departures and all the way down.
I just want to reiterate what you said about coaches, Rahul, because I think it is incredibly important to have leaders have a sounding board, have somebody that can mentor them and talk to them. And you mentioned board members, and I think a lot of times, and I'm just going to jump in here and say a lot of times that seems like a really great approach, but it's also important to remember that board members are the bosses of the executive director. And so they do play a certain role, but there also can be a conflict of interest in being that sounding board for that executive director that quite honestly might need to talk about how the board is governing or how situations are occurring. So sometimes it is really important to make an investment in a coach, and a coach that is very aware of the dynamics between boards and executives so that they can advise accordingly. And so, but at the same time, it's important for that board to encourage a coaching situation for their executive, especially if it's a newer executive as well, because it is different waters that you have to wade through as a new CEO, or even as that next layer down to what we were talking about before. How are you preparing that next layer or that next bench to come up into the ranks? So thank you for bringing up coaching. It's such an important topic, and one that I think is seen as a nice to have or a frivolous spend in some cases, when in actuality it can really create a very sustainable leadership bench for your organization over time. So, you know, and kind of along those lines, you mentioned people sustainability, and I love that phrase of people sustainability, because that really, we've been talking a lot about organizational sustainability, but what's behind that is really the people, right? And I think at times we forget that. And succession planning is a critical topic. And as we were talking about with the executive and board, they need to be talking about succession planning on a regular basis, it sounds like, in order to create that organizational sustainability as well. So, Rahul, in good succession planning, what does that look like for a nonprofit? How do you know it's being really planned out well?
Yeah, no, I think that's really gets to the crux of everything that we're discussing here. And, you know, if you're doing succession planning right, you should actually have 3 different types of plans in place. One is for emergency succession planning. This is a process that's in place in case of a sudden departure of a key leadership team member. There's also planned succession planning, and that's really the process that's put in place for a specific planned departure. And then there's the ongoing leadership development that we discussed too, the ongoing practice to really attract, develop, and retain top talent as well.
And what are some of the principles when they're doing these plans? What should they be? What kind of principles should they be adopting to make sure that they're executed well?
Yeah, great question. I think first and foremost, just really be proactive, intentional, and systematic. Don't wait until that last moment, and try not to be reactive. Another kind of best practice or principle is really creating accountability. You know, you can create committees, you know, so it's not even kind of, the burden isn't on any one single individual, but, you know, create committees to take accountability for succession planning or executive search, you know, which could be a mix of board members and senior level staff. You know, another kind of key principle is really creating various scenarios. we always plan for the future given the information we have today, but there's always going to be unknowns, and it's good to draw out a few high likelihood scenarios. Another kind of key principle is really ensuring that all these initiatives are time bound with objective milestones, indicators that show success and possible risks as well. These objective, milestones and indicators are also key for board members to, govern and review as well, or the committee or whoever's seeking accountability there. And, another approach, this is a little bit more action oriented, but what we've seen also organizations do, and what we often advise, is really identify these critical roles that are out there that can put the organization at high risk, build these successor profiles, and what is that kind of archetype of the leader that should be filling that role. Look internally and actually identify these potential successors, that can actually grow into this role, assess their development needs, what are the gaps that they kind of have, and what are those areas for improvement, and then really very consciously and actively provide them opportunities to build those skill sets and so forth. So that's another kind of best practice that we often see and advise nonprofits when looking at succession planning.
I might add to that, because if we've learned nothing else in the last 2 years, we've learned that the plan that sounded really good a year ago or last week, may not be so great anymore. And so, and nonprofits sometimes have a tendency, right, to pop up an initiative. Oh, we need a plan for this, or we need to document guidelines for this, and we do it, and then we put it in a binder on a shelf until the day that we need it. And if it's been a little bit of time since we've done that, just because we have a succession plan doesn't mean that that's the one that makes sense now. And so, and you sort of alluded to this, but going back and revisiting those, and with new knowns and new unknowns, and do they still make sense with the people and needs in place? What are some barriers to success that we should all watch out for as well?
Yeah, I think there are a lot of barriers out there, no doubt about that. I think probably the number one barrier is just bandwidth and mind share. Leadership teams, who are often the ones kind of holding the fort down when it comes to succession planning and managing some of these people-related risks, they're always stretched in their day-to-day, and really taking the time and mind share out for such an important, process and exercise is often a barrier. Another is, inadequate risk assessment. When we always kind of do our risk assessment at Sattva, we always, one, highlight what is the probability of this risk, and two, what is the impact of this risk. So the way, if something is high probability, high impact, then, it needs to be managed in a certain way. If something is high probability, low impact, or low probability, high impact, then it's important to manage risks in the most appropriate manner. Another aspect is really that human element. As a CEO or executive director, like how does one really plan for their senior team replacements, or even their own replacements? Does this give the image that maybe I'm not committed, or we value our senior team less, or so forth? So there's that kind of human element that's also comes into play. I would say another really big one is, looking at off-the-shelf succession planning. Every institution, every mission, every challenge, culture, aspiration is always going to be different. Budget and so forth. All these are going to be different for every organization. So, there's a lot of best practices out there in succession planning. We've discussed a few of these today, but really contextualizing it to the organization and to the culture is always going to be important. And I think, the other barrier that I kind of mentioned was, little or no accountability when it comes to succession planning as well. That's another key principle that we mentioned, but can also be a barrier at times as well. And, some of these barriers can lead to distressed hiring, firefighting in case of key departures, and even reduced morale if junior team members don't have visibility on that career progression within a firm, and so forth. So yeah, a lot of barriers, no doubt, a lot of best practices out there, but it's, requires that mind share and conscious efforts to do this well.
You highlighted something that I think helps bring it all into focus a little bit, Rahul, which is the risk assessment. And I don't, I think and I think we're seeing it now, and I'm thinking of some of the critical industries that have really been impacted by this pandemic, and how there's some positions in leadership and then just on front lines to make missions happen in general that I think were really overlooked or taken for granted that they were there. And now we're really seeing this, to Shannon's point about at the beginning, this great resignation in some of these key areas. So when we talk about leadership and high level positions, but frontline nurses, EMTs, nursing home staff members, all of these folks that without them, we're really lacking this critical infrastructure at a time when they're critically needed. And have we really done, did we really do a great risk assessment about what that looks like if we aren't able to sustain people in those positions, and what is going to attract them to other positions as well? And so, I worked at a crisis and suicide hotline, and it was actually the volunteers that we really had to think about for succession. How are we going to keep the recruitment up? How are we going to keep people answering those phones at critical moments in time? And it was also the staff members that were supporting those volunteers and making sure they had what they had. And having a very good view into the risk that existed if we didn't have good succession plans in place for those critical positions. So this is just to take note that this is important for your leaders, those that are at the helm, but it's also important for those critical positions to mission that are there to serve others, or that are there to make sure that the lights stay on and that the mission can operate. And boards and executive directors need to be thinking about those three areas of succession planning that you were pointing out above for those critical levels as well. And it's important for, go ahead, sorry.
Oh, no, sorry. Please finish your statement.
No, I was just going to say, and it's important for the board and executive director to, be pushing the whole organization to be looking at those gaps or those areas of weakness.
For sure. And I think, risk assessment is something that should be done at a very granular level, I kind of mentioned both the probability and impact of risk, but also kind of highlighting the different kind of risk types. There could be, people-related risk, operational risk, financial risks, stakeholder risks, and et cetera, et cetera. A lot of external risk given, the changing environment and potentials for second waves, third waves, and so forth. So getting as granular as possible when it comes to risk assessment and really revisiting that at some predefined frequency as well is always going to be a best practice too.
Mm-hmm. And also you mentioned accountability, who's being held accountable for making sure those risks don't come to light, or those worst case scenarios don't come to light, and are being held accountable to having succession plans in place is also something that I don't think that we've really done a good job at pointing out and putting into performance reviews and putting into those KPIs and QBR plans that we need. So a final word of wisdom from you, Rahul. What's the best piece of advice that you would give an organization that's on their succession plan journey or needs to start?
Yeah, no, I think you kind of said it right there. I think the most important thing is to be proactive, be systematic, and establish accountability early on. Essentially, just don't be reactive, because that can really put an organization at risk and has a lot of ripple effects within the institution, in even externally, as they strive to serve community needs and so forth. And unplanned departures coupled with distressed hiring can also lead to even more long-term impact on the organization and not the most positive way and so forth. So definitely just be proactive, be systematic, and establish that accountability early on.
So I know that we've asked a couple of times if there are questions. So if you do have a question, please put it in the Q&A or chat, and we will definitely get to it. But in the interim of that, or while we are waiting to see if there are any questions, Shannon, did you want to kind of wrap us up as far as how people can get connected with everybody?
I would love to. And, before I do that too, I had a thought there at the during the last couple comments that in this remote work environment, and some organizations are planning to go to that or have gone to that pretty permanently. For some, it's more of a, longer term interim solution. But I do wonder if historically we've taken for granted or not even realized how much we learn about how our managers, how the people around us, what they do every day, how they do it, how they approach it, because we see it, because we're living it, because we're in the office next door and we overhear the conversations, because we get pulled into meetings that, we're not scheduled into, like those sorts of things that aren't happening without a lot of intentionality and planning and coordination. They're not happening in the same way with remote work, or happening in the same way. And so, I just call that out. And Rahul, if you have any last thoughts on that too, before we wrap, but it's just the environment, again, the plan that made a lot of sense in our environment 2 years ago might look really different in the future just because we're working differently.
For sure. No, it's definitely going to be important to contextualize any of these plans, in these environments in particular. And, succession planning, even things like onboarding, like I think for anyone to join a new organization remotely, it's just, you don't get that full kind of experience, and how do you even, again, in current scenarios, how do you maintain certain things like culture? How do you replicate that kind of water cooler chat that, we all really did value and we probably really appreciate even more today, that kind of downtime and so forth. I mean, there have been times where I'll just block time with colleagues who I haven't interacted with because maybe they're on a different team, but we're in my office and, hence I don't interact with them as much. And I just block time with 2 or 3 people and just to hang out and catch up and so forth. So like, we definitely need to adapt everything to the current environment of whether it's succession planning or, various elements of culture and just people processes in general.
Yeah, absolutely. And so while you have the mic here, Rahul, can you tell people how to keep in touch, reach out to you, keep in touch with you and your organization?
Sure, most certainly. So you can check out our website, sattva.co.in. That's SATTVA. You can also reach out to me on LinkedIn for any reason. My name is Rahul Shah, and that's Sattva Consulting based in here in the DC area.
Fabulous. Thank you. And likewise, you can visit the Nonprofit Alliance, learn about membership and our upcoming programs at our website, tnpa.org, or reach out to me on LinkedIn. Thanks, Jamie, so much for having us here today.
Awesome discussion as always, Shannon. Thank you so much for co-hosting today. Rahul, thank you so much. This was such an inspiring conversation. And I know it got me thinking a lot about succession planning and leadership, but also critical positions and how we are planning for the future and making sure that we can all reach our missions. I also want to just say that this is, we're talking about nonprofits, but I think that all of your suggestions can be used across industries as far as needing to plan for the future and cultivate leadership at our companies and organizations. So thank you. I want to also thank the audience for joining us today. Please connect with Shannon and Rahul on LinkedIn. Continue to ask questions. I know that they would love to hear from you. And thank you for joining our live stream. And we hope that you have a wonderful day.